Hello, I'm Ann Gritch, and I am delighted to welcome you to this segment of the oral history of the Diocese of San Jose. And I am particularly pleased this afternoon because Jeannine Leichner is with us. Jeannine has been a lay ecclesial minister in the diocese for many, many years, and as we talk, you will find out why I hold her in such high esteem. So Jeannine, welcome.
Thank you, Ann.
Now, your background, you did not grow up in the Archdiocese of San Francisco.
No, I did not.
So tell us a little bit about your growing up where and when.
Okay, I grew up in Danville, Illinois, in the Diocese of Peoria.
Okay.
And for the first 4 years of my schooling, I went to a public school. And when I was in the 4th grade, I remember one time my dad and I went to Mass, and the priest, Father Labonte, noticed us and pulled my dad aside after Mass and said, "Has she made her first communion yet?" And he said, "No." And so it was arranged that I would go to the Catholic school, St. Joseph's School, for 2 weeks to prepare for my first Holy Communion. And that was really a life-saving or life-changing moment. I really loved what I heard. I don't know whether it was Sister Evangeline, who was the one who prepared me, and the class, and I just loved everything I heard, and from then on I wanted to go to Catholic school.
Okay.
And so I'm sure it was, a little bit of a hardship for my parents because it wasn't next door. And so I went to Catholic school, finished up at St. Joseph School. By the way, it was a 2-room school.
No kidding.
Yes, 2 rooms. There was 1st to 4th and 5th through 8th. And I always felt like I had something in common with Bishop Dumaine, who went to school in a 1-room schoolhouse.
He would love the fact that he one-upped you on that.
Yeah. After grade school, by the way, they were Franciscan sisters, and it was a German order. The parish had been primarily ministering to the German immigrants. We weren't German, but somehow we seemed to get there. I went to Schlarman High School, which was a Catholic high school. Bishop Schlarman was the namesake of the school. And it was very new. It was a very small school, and it was also co-ed, which was unusual for a Catholic school in those days. And so I finished there, and then it was the Holy Cross Sisters were there. And so I was, kind of encouraged to go to St. Mary's, encouraged and assisted as well, because I was the first person in my family to go to college. And so I went to St. Mary's across the street from Notre Dame, which is still a girls' school, which I think is very good.
Yes.
And so after I graduated there, I got a job at the University of Illinois. And at St. Mary's, I majored in mathematics. And so I got a job at the University of Illinois and was a research associate for a coordinated science laboratory. And by the encouragement of my to-be husband, I started to take classes at the university. And so at the University of Illinois, I got a master's in mathematics. And then much later, I went to the University of San Francisco to get a master's in religious education.
But before we get there, what brought you to California?
Well, Gene was an electrical engineer, and this is where everything was happening.
And still is.
This is where he wanted to be. It was hard for me to leave, and this is truly a different culture even when you come from the Midwest. So.
Yeah. Now, when would that have been when you came?
We first came in 1967. Okay. That was when we first came to California.
We were part of the Archdiocese then, 1967.
Yeah, we were.
Right. And did you settle in Saratoga right away?
No, we lived in Los Altos and went to St. Simon's.
Okay. And then how did you get to Saratoga?
Oh, that's a long story. I don't know. I'll try to give you the short version. In 19 1970, Jean had worked for was working for RCA, and he was working on computer-aided instruction, and that was kind of new at the time too. But in 1970, I think it was 70, yeah, it was 70, they decided to go out of the computer business, at least the computer-aided instruction business. And so he had a choice of either going to New Jersey or to go to Palm Beach. And they had a facility in Palm Beach. So on the very day that we had everything packed up to go, and he decided to go there, he tried to get a position here in Silicon Valley at the time, but there was a lot of technical unemployment at that time. And I guess we just didn't try hard enough. But at any rate, we had everything packed up to go to Florida. And that very day, he got an offer back here. Well, we had a house, we had everything, you know, so we decided that we would go ahead and go.
Oh.
Well, we were there. I always like to say we were there 6 months, but not the same 6 months, because he went there early, and I went later and stayed later. We weren't there very long till RCA went out of the computer business entirely. Ooh. And so luckily, he called up the man who had offered them the job before we left, and he says, is it still open? He says, yes, it's still open, but it isn't going to last for more than 6 to 8 months. He says, I'm coming. So,
great.
So when we came back, we ended up in Saratoga.
Unpacked the car.
Unpacked the car. It was a very hard year.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Now, how did you get involved in the parish?
Well,
how did that happen?
First, I was involved at St. Simon's before we left.
All right.
This will surprise anybody who listens to this. I saw an announcement in the bulletin. And my daughter would be entering the religious education program. And I thought, you know, I've had a lot of background in religious education, you know, going to St. Mary's, certainly, and Catholic education all through that. And I really felt it was my turn to give back. And I also had another motive. It was more personal, and that is I felt that I would grow in my faith if I did this. And I certainly have done that as a result of being involved in that time was religious education.
Sure, yeah. So you were at Sacred Heart then?
No, I was at St. Simon's.
No, wait a minute. You were at Sacred Heart when the announcement came out about us being a diocese.
Yes, yes.
January 27th, 1981.
81.
What was your reaction?
You know, I was more involved in parish than diocese, so I really didn't understand the significance of becoming a diocese. So it really didn't have a big impact on me. I'm sorry to say that.
No,
but that's just the way it was.
Not to worry. Yeah, that's interesting though.
Yeah,
to be that involved in parish and also not having grown up in the archdiocese.
Right. I didn't
significance
have. I didn't have the emotional attachment. You know.
Exactly. Exactly. That's amazing. Yeah. So you came into Catechetical Ministry when your daughter started out. Who mentored you?
Well, first of all, it was Sister Timothy at St. Simon's, and she was very good, and she had a lot of confidence in me, more confidence I had in myself because I had never worked with children before, and I went to everything that they asked me to go to. But then the next mentor was Dolores Buckholtz. Dolores had just come out of the convent. She had been a former Holy Family sister. And by the way, Sister Timothy was also Holy Family. And Dolores had really a great background. And she was very encouraging, and she was really my first mentor there. But there were many, many other mentors, and I almost hesitate to mention them. But Sister Marcella was certainly a mentor, and you know, just everything that was, you know, I had, by that time I was, well, actually you were too. I don't know whether you remember.
Oh, I remember
but
that
you were my basic catechist instructor.
That's right, a million years ago.
Yes, and I kept your notes. I'm not sure I still have them, but I kept them for a long, long time.
You flatter me, thank you.
And so you were a mentor. And then Marcella, and through the Master Catechist program, which was really a very special program at at St. Joseph Seminary. And it was, if I remember correctly, it was once a month,
Yeah.
and it was all day.
Yep.
And I just remember the liturgies, just getting to know people, and it just was, and the wonderful presenters that we had,
Oh.
and they were really top notch. So
We've
that
always
was,
been resource rich in
yes,
terms of
we
speakers.
have.
We've
Yes,
been
we
so
have.
fortunate.
And they've been really very good. And you know, they really helped form me. And then after that, you know, I learned a lot from leadership skills with Father Basil Royston, who was at the parish. And then I was much influenced also by Christiane Brusselmans,
Oh, yes.
because, you know, she was pioneering the having parents involved in their in the formation education of their children. So I was very much influenced by her, and also by Sister Maria de la Cruz.
Oh, yes.
I remember her when I would go to the conference, or whatever they called it in those days, at St. Joseph. I think it was there, and I think there was one at St. Francis.
Yes.
And I remember her speaking and being impressed by her. And then later on, I was very fortunate when I went to USF. She was one of my professors. So.
And Father Frank Buckley was
Oh yes, and Father Frank Buckley. Yes, yes.
a good friend of yours as well as
Yes,
a mentor.
absolutely,
Yeah, that is
absolutely.
So you were working at Sacred Heart. When did you become the director of Catechetical Ministry?
I think it was in 1981. Prior to that, I had been a coordinator of, well, not all the time, but prior to it, some few years before, I was a coordinator for First Communion preparation.
How big was the program, Jeannine?
The whole program?
The one that you directed, yeah. Because there is a school at Sacred Heart, right?
Yes, yes. It was pretty big, as I remember, probably about 200, if I remember correctly. I remember First Communion classes were like 80.
Oh, wow.
So I mean, that was probably a high point. But that included the school, which would have had, you know, 20 some or 25 or 30, something like that.
Sure.
But it was a good sized program. Yeah.
What were some of the wonderful things that happened?
Wonderful.
I remember a story about you riding a bicycle around the gym and fell off and broke your arm.
Yes, yes, yes. I didn't break my arm, but I sure sprained my wrist. That was one of the wonderful things. Every year we would have a catechist appreciation dinner, and we always put together a skit. And and at that time there was Maureen and Sister Virginia and Janice and myself. And so we put together this skit, and we were I guess I was the flying nun, because we all dressed up like nuns, I remember that. And on the bicycle, I was the flying nun. And yes, the bicycle skidded. You don't ride a bicycle on a gym floor. It's not a good idea. That was one of the wonderful things. We always had a lot of fun there. And of course, First Communion celebrations were always, you know, highlights of the year.
Sure.
And I work with some really, really good people, including the ones I mentioned, and Donna Brock, and you know, people who were really committed, and we learned from each other, and it was a good time. And I had a wonderful secretary as well.
What were some of the challenges?
Well, the challenges were pretty much any parish's challenge.
Sure.
You know, recruiting and training and forming catechists.
Perennial.
Yeah, always. and trying to help the parents encourage the parents to engage with the formation of their children. That certainly was. Also, also when a parish has a school, there's always a case of sharing facilities and collaborating as much as possible. There was one other challenge, which is really important. I was coping after the earthquake.
Oh.
I was at Sacred Heart, and there were probably close to 50 children in class at the time when the earthquake hit.
This is the 1989.
1989, because we went, I think we went till 5:15 or something like that, and it maybe hit at 5:10, or it was
5:04.
5:04. Okay, so 5:15 is when we would leave, and we were all there. And I remember 2 bookcases falling behind me and having to jump over them, but wondering what else was going on with everything. And
you weren't a Californian, so this is something a little new.
However, you know, that summer there had been an earthquake in the middle of the night that summer. And for some reason, I was awake. And I remember thinking, I really need to think about what to do if there's an earthquake, you know, when we have catechetics. Well, the thing that was scary about it was there was a class of students in the library, and the library, you know, was lined with, just like this, with books, and above the bookshelves were trophies, all the way around the library, and thank God, the kids all knew what to do. There was nobody who was hurt. And so they all had gotten under the tables in the library. Yeah. And so I'll tell you, after that, we had some serious time of planning for earthquakes in the future.
Yeah. And of course, you had to wait until parents came to get the kids.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And I remember one parent who was one of these cool parents, and she drove up and she says, "Oh, it's so bad," you know, and I thought, oh my gosh. And another parent came up and said, well, the bridge fell in, and I thought, you know, I don't know what to do. So,
but you managed.
So yeah, we managed,
My.
and got everybody home.
Yeah. So was it the early 90s when Sister Patricia Marie came and recruited you for Diocesan Ministry?
Isn't exactly the way it happened.
Okay, tell us how it happened.
You know, that was the time when there was a reorganization. And like a lot of other catechetical leaders, we were not very pleased.
Right.
Because it seemed to diminish catechetical ministry. And I really wasn't anxious to go to the diocese. Although by that time I had already gotten my degree, and I didn't, you know, somebody would ask me, why did you go to USF? And I said, to do what I do better. So I really didn't know where I was going, but I really wasn't anxious to go. And there were enough people that came to me and encouraged me, and God was pushing. So finally I decided that I would call Sister Patricia Marie and ask for an appointment to find out more about the job. And so I went in and I asked my questions, and not realizing that she was, as I was checking out the job, she was interviewing me.
She had a way about her that you would never know.
I never would have known it. I never would have known it. After I had talked to her, I did apply, and then I got the invitation to come interview with, you know, a group of people, Claude being one.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is history.
That's right. I remember that. So our offices were at Lafayette then when you first came?
Yes.
That's right, yeah.
And I remember walking into Sister Alice's old office. It was long like this, and there was a desk here, and I went, it's like, oh my goodness, you know.
Yes. And of course, Bishop Dumaine was our bishop then.
Yes.
Tell me about your relationship with him, besides the fact that you both went to tiny schools.
Right, right. You know, I didn't really have much of a relationship with him. Most often not Claude, but Sister Patricia Marie would be interfacing. I would see him in a formal way, asking him to do this or that, or at the Pius X or something like that.
He always came to Pius
Oh, he
X.
always did, and he always spoke, and he always was right on and very gracious. And I would say anytime I did have a relationship with him, he was very gracious and very kind. And but I have to say, from my point, he was a little intimidating.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Many share that.
Yeah. But the one thing I do remember about the bishop was, I don't remember exactly how it happened, but we decided that it was necessary to make some confirmation videos. And and we had CTN at that time. And I remember being up at CTN, and he was there, and there were a few other people that were there as well.
Can I interrupt? That's Catholic Television Network.
Yes,
just
Catholic
for our folk
Television
who are-
Network.
right.
And he made a video, first of all, well, there were 3 videos. I don't remember the order that he made them. One was for the candidates, one was for the catechists, and one was for the parents. I remember him, sitting down in front of the camera and just talking.
Yeah.
Never a hesitation, a misspeaking or anything. Going from one, taking a breath, going to the other, taking a breath, going to the third. And it's pretty awesome to watch somebody do that. Then he took a few breaths because the next task was to do it in Spanish. And I remember he took a little bit of a break. And I remember him talking to somebody who was there who spoke Spanish and asking for a couple of the words that he wasn't quite sure on. And then he went through the same thing. Video in Spanish for the catechists, video in Spanish for the catechists, for the candidates, the catechists, and then finally the parents. Never hesitation through all of it. That was remarkable and very, very impressive.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, his Spanish was absolutely terrific. In fact, a story that he loves to tell is, I think it was Ana Maria Pineda's relative died. And after the bishop preached in Spanish and then was greeting people afterwards in English and in Spanish. And one of her relatives said to her, "My, the bishop's English is terrific."
Oh.
He said that was the greatest compliment he ever received about his Spanish. Isn't that fun? Yeah. I do like that a lot. So your time in the diocesan office, what were some of the high points?
Well, to be very honest with you, one of the high points was getting through the first orientation day.
Yes, I remember that.
You remember that?
Oh, because that was shortly after you got there.
That's right. That's right. I woke up that morning and I really felt sick to my stomach. And I'm sure it was nerves, but I barely got through the day, the morning. And I remember, I think you were the one who brought me home, or maybe
Sister
it was Patricia Marie.
Because, and I followed, because she drove you in your car.
Okay.
And I followed to bring her back.
Okay, well that has to be one of the highlights for sure.
Yes, because I mean, these had been your peers up until...
Yes. Mm-hmm. And of course, the highlights too were the Pius X dinners.
Particularly, was it the 25th?
Yes, we had the 25th
You
there.
did a great job with that. In fact, I still have the program for
Oh, I do too. Yeah. And I tried to, to reach different people that had been in the diocese. I mean, like Terry Sullivan and so on. And it was a very special time. And other highlights were, as we're getting to work with different cultures. Now, I have to say that was also a challenge because I was the only person in charge, or not, I was the associate for Catechetical Ministry. And there was no Spanish-speaking associate for Catechetical Ministry. And so that was a little challenging. Growing up in the Midwest, I had very little cultural contact with other cultures. I remember at the University of Illinois, there were Indians, but I don't think I never had any interaction with Hispanics at all. So, I remember telling them at the interview that, you know, this was my background, so I did the very best I could. And I remember also before Sister Alice left, we had a meeting, and she said, you know, make sure that you continue the Spanish-speaking catechetical leaders group. And I really took her seriously. And so we met, you know, and of course the meetings, and I was trying to trying to learn a little bit of Spanish along the way, but, you know, you can't do everything at once.
Nope.
And I remember the meetings that were, you know, they were all talking in Spanish, and they would be nice, and they would stop, and they would explain, but I would sit there and concentrate. I concentrated so hard that, you know, my head hurt afterwards.
Because that would have been like Irma Rangel?
No, that was before Irma. It would have been Sister Josefina and Olga.
Oh, and Lupita?
Yes, Lupita. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Those are the three I can remember. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's early on.
Yes, yes. But they were, I really learned a lot from them, and really came to appreciate the culture as well as the conditions, you know, in their parishes, because many of them worked under rather difficult circumstances. You know, they had big classes, they had maybe a tiny office, they maybe didn't have anybody to help. It was
no budget.
No budget. Many were not paid, so it was very hard for them. But, you know, that was one of the cultures, and then I have to say that Brother Fong was really, really helpful in helping me understand the Vietnamese culture.
Yeah, I miss Brother Fong.
Yeah, I do too. He was great, and he had a good sense of humor, and he was great.
Terrific. Yes, exactly.
And then, of course, later on, you know, I got to work with Koreans and the Chinese, and then the Vietnamese and the Filipinos, and when I look back, I really consider my cultural interaction with, you know, with the different cultures one of the gifts of having been at the diocese, because I would not have had that opportunity otherwise.
Now, one of the great gifts that you gave the diocese is really the development and expansion of the Master Catechist program.
Well, yes, continuing it.
Continuing it and broadening it.
And broadening it.
Professionalizing it.
Yes, yes. And even before that, I felt that having set up a uniform basic catechist formation as well, which was based, you know, had video bases, so it became uniform. But the Master Catechist, I really have always felt that whether we're volunteers or paid, the parishes, the people in the parishes deserve the best.
That's right.
And that, and we needed to be as good as we could possibly be. And, you know, I encouraged continuing enrichment and that kind of thing.
I remember once a year having to fill out a form.
Yeah.
How many hours I had done.
That's right. That's
professional
right.
development.
Right.
No, it was very good. It really.
But it built on what was already there.
Sure.
And what I had learned previously. So.
But the other thing I'm very much aware of is that you and Father Jack Bonser worked on the curriculum for the Institute for Leadership and Ministry before it came into being.
And you know, that was a highlight too. You know, to be part of that beginning of the ILM.
Sure.
And
I mean, a brand new venture.
Yeah, and it's wonderful to look back and see how far it's come. I mean, not, you know, it's just, you know, there's no question, it's an institution now.
It is. Do you realize in September it'll be 20 years?
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing.
No,
and the diocese is
I
only
didn't realize it
and the
was 20
diocese
years.
is only 36 years old.
Yeah.
So I mean, that is.
Yeah.
You're right. It's an institution. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Linda Cungaricchio is just doing such a fine job.
She
now.
is.
It's just
She
wonderful.
is.
It's terrific. So, how would you say? Well, let me ask you. You retired. Of course, we never seem to retire from ministry.
No.
So, tell me what you're doing now at ministry at Sacred Heart.
Well, at Sacred Heart, at the moment, I'm doing RCIA for adults. And even though I had a lot of background in it, it was all theoretical. And so now this is a chance to put it into use. And it really is a wonderful ministry.
Isn't it? Yeah.
And up until recently, I also did a Newcomer Ministry. And that's going to have to be turned over to somebody else at the moment. But that, again, is a really important ministry.
Yes.
Because if we aren't hospitable, they're not going to come back. And so,
And it can't just be the clergy. It really has
no,
to be the
no,
folk
it has
in the
to be
pew.
the people.
Yeah.
It has to be the people.
Absolutely.
And we got a good start in that.
Now, are you still doing some work with Master
Yes.
Catechist?
Well, yes. I was going to say that too, that I also teach in ILM from time to time, and the Master Catechist program, and help with the evaluations and so on.
That is great.
So it's good to kind of keep my hand
keep
in.
a toe in, hand and toe in.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
How would you say the diocese has changed over the years?
Well, I was thinking about that, and I don't know whether this is answering your question or not, but one of the things that I thought of is my ministry went from religious education to catechesis and now to faith formation. And so that certainly is a change over, unfortunately, close to 50 years. And so that's been a change.
For the better. I mean, as we...
Well, I think it's probably an
evolution.
an expanding of a better understanding of what we're really about. And certainly there are more, I think there is more of an awareness of evangelization as being central to everything we do. I think we certainly are seeing more of our priests from other cultures. It was first Irish were the ones that came over, but now we've got many, many different cultures.
Which is wonderful, because our people see priests who look like they do.
And I think on a very positive side, that I think that people are becoming more aware of them being a multicultural church, and not the resistance that I think we saw for a while.
And Bishop McGraw has been very good about talking about that as a real gift to the diocese. Yeah.
And certainly, I think also there's another thing that I think is a change, and that's being more and more aware of social justice issues. I think that's really, maybe I was just not the one that wasn't aware of it, but I think that it's a thread now that we see all the time.
I think, and then certainly more parishes. There were always several parishes that you kind of knew were the social justice parishes. But, and I think allied with that has also been a much more of an awareness in terms of ecology, in terms of care for the earth. And of course our Holy Father has been in the forefront. Yeah, that's amazing. What do you think will be the challenges for the next few years for the diocese?
Well, I think one of them is to become a church of evangelization. I think we're talking about it, but I don't think we're there yet. I think another one is to continue to implement the Second Vatican Council. I think I see, I don't know how widespread it is, but I see desires to kind of go back to before the council. And maybe people not knowing even what the teachings of the council were.
Because it was 50 plus years ago.
There was another one that I thought of. Well, I think there's a practical challenge for the diocese, and that is adapting to the changing Catholic demographics. Churches that were filled on this side are no longer filled and bursting on the other side. So I think that is a challenge. And I think a perennial challenge is finding a way to engage our youth and young adults in a way that really captures them.
One quick question I just thought of. As you know, our seminarians this year will be going to Mundelein, which I understand is in Illinois.
Oh, yes.
Have you been to Mundelein?
No, I actually haven't, but I know roughly where it is.
I think it'll be a good experience for them.
Oh, I do too.
To see another part of the country, although I am sure it is much different from when you were growing up. The multiculturalism is everywhere now.
Yes, yes.
But
well, there was in Chicago. There were a lot of other cultures, and they're going to run into the Polish and the Italians and all of those in Chicago. But from what I've heard and seen of Mundelein, they have some wonderful professors and mentors. So I think it's going to be a good
I do too.
experience.
And I think it'll be good for the Church of San Jose. I really do. Good. So any final thoughts? I'm so glad that you were able to be with us.
You know, one of the things I forgot to say that was a highlight of my time in the diocese was seeing what was a little catechetical conference at St. Joseph of Cupertino when I first came grow every year until when I left, as I remember, I was working with Sister Betty Gambonini, and it was catechetics and liturgy, and where that was, I think in its beginning, if we had 200, I probably felt good. And then when we went to, when I left, we were at the San Jose State Student Center, as I remember, and there were over 1,000. And it continues, and I'm just delighted about that. There is one other thing that I forgot to mention that was a highlight of my time in the diocese that I really feel good about. The Diocese of Oakland, the Diocese of Monterey, and the Archdiocese of San Francisco and the Diocese of San Jose really collaborated very well. And one of the things we did was we did a summer foundational program for new directors of religious education. And it was a week-long day, a full day for a week. And it was primarily to orient new people, because oftentimes they had not been in catechetical ministry before. You know, they had been just tapped to head up the ministry. And so it was a very practical orientation to give some of them some of the skills that they would be, help them be effective in their ministry. And we also had fun doing it.
Well, I can imagine.
Yeah, we did. But it was, and as it went on, we also included youth ministers. And some of the people who worked at the diocese, for example, John Ronaldo, went through that.
Oh, did he?
Yes, he did.
All
yes,
right.
he did.
Yeah. Now that's any time I think we can go beyond our borders and collaborate with other dioceses. It just makes it so much richer.
Yes. No, it was a good thing.
Well, I am so grateful to you for being here, and thank you. You've just added a lot to our history, Jeannine.
Oh, good. Thank you. I appreciate that, and it's an honor to be here and be included in the history.
Super.
Thank you.